Hello, Facebook friends. Hello, Americans, citizens of the planet. Hello, revolutionaries. It's Jill Stein, former Green Party candidate for president, coming to you from my home, along with my cat, Willie, right here, who I hope will be willing to sit on the sidelines. We'll give it a try. He's very anxious to participate and be part of our democracy, like all of us are feeling right now in the aftermath of this very tragic consequence to the election, an election which was from the get-go very, shall we say, toxic, very corrupt, and which attempted to force two terrible choices down our throats. So I'm here tonight basically to say thank you so much to everyone who stood up for a politics of integrity, who stood up for an America and a world that works for all of us. Thank you to everyone who refused to take marching orders from the political pundits, from the party operatives, who were very busy telling us just be good little boys and girls and, don't make a lot of noise and just go along with these two candidates being forced down our throats. One, a neo-fascist, the other, a queen of corruption, a proven warmonger. So in the aftermath of this disaster of an election, there's a lot of soul searching, there's an incredible amount of pain, there's real repression and brutality, and I want to say, of course, that we stand with all of those communities who were silenced, who were shut out of this election, whose votes were not allowed, people whose votes were oppressed and repressed and stolen, and to extend our sympathy, our empathy, and our support for all those communities who are feeling the violence of this politics in the aftermath of the election, with the unleashing of brutality, of oppression against women, of violence, of racism, of Islamophobia, of homophobia, and hostility to the trans community, to the Latino community, and so on. So we are with you. It's really important for us to stand together and to stand strong. And it's really important for us to keep standing up for the kind of transformation, economic, political, social, ecological, racial. We need transformation now more than ever, especially in the follow-up to this very tragic election. There's a lot of discussion going on now, I'm sure you've heard, that tries to figure out what's going on. And unfortunately, we're seeing very much of the same thing after this election that we saw before this election. And my cat, wants to be a part of this discussion. So we saw, basically a media and a political system that really tried to shut down discussion, that created a media blackout, that restricted discussion to two candidates that were the most disliked and untrusted in our history. These two candidates that the media basically circled the wagons around. And while people were screaming for other choices, we were basically shut down. The debates, which should have been opened up to all four candidates on the ballot in enough states that we could actually win the election. The American people were screaming, 76% were screaming to open up the debates, and the political system shut it down. So I just want to raise that word of caution right now, not to let them shut down discussion again, because it's the same pundits, political operatives, corporate media, even the liberal media, which is again circling the wagons and trying to restrict discussion at this really important time. And, they're blaming certainly independent political parties, and we're going to come back to that in a minute and talk about why that is contrary to mathematics, contrary to reality, and contrary to democracy. We're going to come back to that and why, in fact, you and our campaign are, in fact, the unspoilers of a rotten political system. We are the unspoilers of a rotten system of elections, politics, economics, end-stage corporate capitalism, neoliberalism, call it what you want. But we really are the ones who are calling for the real reforms that we need. So they want to blame us. They want to blame the FBI, which, you know, may have contributed a little bit. They want to blame Bernie Sanders for having raised principled concerns in the first place. They basically want to blame, Anthony Weiner. They want to blame everyone and everything and avoid discussing what the real drivers of Donald Trump's victory are and were. So above all, that is this neoliberal agenda, or to just put it in plain terms, it's the agenda of austerity, it's the agenda of these rigged corporate trade deals that send our jobs overseas. It's the agenda of financialization and economic disparity, of lowering wages, of insecure part-time temporary jobs. Anybody know what that's about out there? I think most of the younger generation knows what that's about because that's all that you see. Those are the jobs that are open to you. That's what our recovery was about. So, you know, the political establishment doesn't want to look at their role in creating this crisis. And that's the political establishment, including and in particular the Democratic Party, Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton, and the legacy of what Bill Clinton brought us and what Hillary Clinton supported and continued to cheerlead for. That includes NAFTA, that includes the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which she really only put up token resistance against, having been pressured into flip-flopping on that. Their policies of Wall Street deregulation that led to the meltdown of our economy, the disappearance of 9 million jobs, the theft of 5 million homes, and so on. You could look at their policies on immigration, the Clinton immigration bill of the 1990s that opened the door to militarizing the border, to recruiting police to use as ICE agents. They could look at their policies on mass incarceration and the Clinton crime bill that opened the floodgates to that. So, you know, I think you get my point that the Democratic Party and the powers that be want to look everywhere except to what they are about. They could look at their sabotage of Bernie Sanders, the one candidate who could have beat Donald Trump hands down. They could look at their role in launching Donald Trump, which was part of the DNC, the Democratic National Committee strategy. Let's lift up these lunatic fringe candidates, give them credibility, give them visibility in the media, tell the media to take them seriously. So the Democrats have a lot to be accountable for here. In my view, they've really eliminated themselves as real contenders for the change that we need. How many decades do we have to keep allowing them to silence real reform, to end real change, to propagandize us into going along with this outrageous, predatory policy of economics and politics that's basically of, by, and for large corporations, lobbyists, and super PACs. That's who was sponsoring the Democratic Party and Hillary Clinton's campaign. Likewise, Donald Trump, of course, but there was never any confusion about that. As Hillary released in her own emails, she had one position for public consumption, another position for private consumption, which is why their positions and her positions and the Democratic Party really needs to be rebutted and debunked. I want to take a minute before turning to your questions about why the spoiler spin is a bunch of BS, to put it bluntly. Why you just want to reject that propaganda that you were the spoiler, or that our campaign was the spoiler. So let me say first a word about the math, because people like Paul Krugman ought to know how to do his math. You'd think Rachel Maddow or CNN, you'd think they'd have people on the math here, because the numbers make it very clear. So, you know, there are climate deniers out there, there are science deniers, and there are math deniers. And those who attempt to pin spoiling the election on us need to look at their math. Let me tell you what the math says. Not in a single state had our campaign been wiped out, and had we been taken out of the equation, not a single state that went for Trump would have gone for Clinton. And here's the math behind it. According to exit polls done by CBS, 61% of Green voters would have stayed home. These weren't voters that we could say, well, just switch your vote. You know, our voters knew better than to support a very toxic and corrupt political system. So 61% of our voters simply would not have come out. Among the rest, those votes were divided between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. Yes, a lot of Republicans saw us as the alternative to Donald Trump, as did they see Bernie Sanders. Unfortunately, the media whited us out. They created a media silence, radio silence, utter and total, around our campaign. So many more Trump supporters might have voted for us if they had the benefit of knowing who their other choices were. So it turns out actually 61% of Stein-Baraka voters would have stayed home, 25% would have voted for Hillary, and 14% would have voted for Donald Trump. If you plug those numbers in to any state that you like, any battleground state, into Michigan, into Wisconsin, into Florida, not in any of those states would the numbers have changed or would the outcome have changed. We'll have all those calculations for those who like to really get into the weeds. We'll have those calculations on our website very soon. But this is just to give you the strength to debunk those arguments, because I'm sure you're hearing them. Anybody hearing them? If you're hearing them, just send me a thumbs up or send me a note, because I'm sure hearing them a lot, hearing them in the media. An op-ed by one of the Coen brothers, one of the movie producers in the New York Times just in the last day or two, said as much, blaming, we had the distinction of being number one in his list of who to blame Hillary Clinton's failure on. So just to be clear, that has nothing to do with us. When you factor it in Gary Johnson, the outcome doesn't change either. In one state, his votes would have flipped. In other words, had he stayed home, his voters would have flipped the outcome in one state. That was in Michigan, which would have changed 16 electoral votes. Again, not enough to have made the difference. So to call third parties the spoilers is exactly the opposite of what's true. And let me say why that is. Democracy needs voices and choices. Those who are screaming about third-party spoilers, ignoring the math, ignoring the science here, those who are just trying to distract from their own culpability, especially the media, who had so much to do with shutting down real dialogue and real democracy and lifting up Donald Trump and making him out to be the credible opposition. In fact, democracy needs more voices, more choices, open media, and open debates. Those who say, shut down the opposition parties, silence Gary Johnson, silence myself, what they're basically saying is that we should have only 2 official state political parties. So okay, let's just have state-sanctioned political parties, only 2, no real opposition. Now, I don't think anyone in their, anyone who's not a zombie, politically is going to buy that the Democratic and Republican parties should be the only political parties forever. We should be locked into these two corrupt, corporate-sponsored political systems that serve the big banks, the fossil fuel giants, the war profiteers, the insurance companies. Let's just freeze our political system. So, by their saying that, they're basically saying, forget democracy, forget opposition parties, let's be like Russia or let's be like Iran that basically silences political opposition. So that's not the solution. What then is the solution? Well, clearly the solution is let's fix this screwed up political system that makes it so-called dangerous to have political opposition. This is right now a system where you're supposed to vote for the lesser evil, and you're supposed to decide who do you hate the most, who are you most afraid of, and then vote, for the opposite of that person. And that's how we got an outcome like Donald Trump, because most people were actually more afraid of Hillary Clinton and more untrusting of Hillary Clinton than they were of Donald Trump. This was a big rejection, a big fat no to our corrupt political system. So this doesn't solve the problem. We need to be able to bring our values to our votes so we can vote for actually what we want and what we need. So how do we liberate our votes? It's actually not complicated. There's a system called ranked choice voting. It's used in cities across the country, and the state of Maine just passed it in a voter referendum, which is the only way ranked choice voting passes because the political establishment doesn't want it. It's a big threat to their stranglehold on power. But it's been passed in cities all across the country and now in the state of Maine. So we're calling for ranked choice voting in all states, really at all levels, but including for the presidential election. Because what ranked choice voting does is it says you can rank your choices. Instead of just voting for one candidate, you rank your choices. And if your first choice loses, your vote is automatically reassigned to your second choice. So what that means is you can vote for an underdog, like Ajamu Baraka and myself, as your first choice, and you could vote for Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump or whoever you thought was, the least dangerous among them. That could be your second choice. And if your first choice underdog lost, your vote then automatically goes to your second choice. So it's a win-win. It brings in more voices, more choices. It assures that the vote doesn't get split or divided. It assures there is no unintended consequence. And it basically assures that our votes come back into, or I should say our values come back into our votes. Because just voting for the politics of fear has basically delivered everything we were afraid of. And Donald Trump is another great example of that. So we can have ranked choice voting. We can move to a system of open debates, and that's a second campaign that we're working on now. Let me urge you to go to Jill2016.com, join our email list, so that you can be on the pipeline for these initiatives. One very important date coming up is January 20th and 21st, Inauguration Day and the day after. That's going to be a day of major protests, as you know, and we will be helping to sponsor a protest in Washington, D.C. Called Occupy the Inauguration. And the theme of this is We Do Not Consent, Trump is Not My President. Along the idea that we do not consent to empire, to endless war, to the destruction of our environment, to the harassment of women and the LGBTQ community, to the deportation of immigrants. We do not consent to the export of our jobs, to the depressing of our wages, to the oppression of labor unions and working people. We do not consent to this world that a corrupt two-party system has brought us. We are standing up and rejecting that system We are coming together to unite and fight, and we are pushing for those reforms that we need right now to change the system, to fundamentally change it. And also, as you know, we should be celebrating right now, or we are celebrating, that we have defeated the Trans-Pacific Partnership. And I want to encourage you to adopt this mindset of resistance, because that wasn't Donald Trump's doing. That was our doing. That was the fight of these last 5 years. And we are going to continue that fight. One last word of encouragement. Remember what happened, or you may not remember, but those of you who have my color hair, you may remember what happened under Richard Nixon. Under Richard Nixon, who was one of the most oppressive, devious, dishonest, repressive presidents in history, what did we accomplish? We were very mobilized, in part because of the war and the draft, and we knew that our lives were on the line. And the lives of our brothers, in particular, were on the line for being drafted and sent to war in Vietnam. So we got out and we mobilized, not just against the war. We mobilized for women's right to choose in spite of a very conservative Supreme Court, and we won. We pressured the Supreme Court into standing up and passing Roe v. Wade. Or with their Roe v. Wade decision. We brought the troops home from Vietnam. We stood up for the environment, which was just, a new rising concern at the time. We got the Clean Air Act and the Clean Water Act. We established the Environmental Protection Agency. We also got protection for workers in the workplace through OSHA. So there was so much that we could do because we were mobilized, because we were out in the street, because we were uniting and we were fighting, and we put the fear of democracy into our very undemocratic misleaders. And that's what we need to do now. That's what we've done with the TPP. That's what we need to keep doing. So I want to urge you to stay strong, to continue the fight, and to keep fighting. So let's see, I'm looking at some of your comments. Lena is saying that she feels discouraged by the results of the election. Is it possible that America is more conservative? So let me just assure you, Lena, along with my cat, who's asking to be noticed here. So say hi, Willie. Let me just assure you that ours is a majoritarian agenda. This is what the American people are clamoring for. Someone is saying they remember the Nixon era. Yes, we stood up in the Nixon era. Someone is saying, how about instead of building resistance, we build bridges? Clearly, we need to do both. And, we need to build bridges to all the other communities who are struggling for justice right now. It remains to be seen exactly where Donald Trump is going to come out. There are some suggestions he may be willing to step back on some of his election issues, like the wall and about deporting all immigrants. Now he's stepped way back to say he's looking only at deporting those who have broken laws, who are guilty of having committed a crime. Well, that's actually the position of the Obama administration. So, that would be a great improvement over what Trump was calling for, but not enough. We're calling for a welcoming path to citizenship and recognizing the really vital, essential contribution of immigrants to our economy and our culture and our communities. And we're calling for dealing with the immigration crisis back at its very roots. Let's stop causing this crisis through misguided U.S. foreign policies, through NAFTA, and so on. Let me come back here to another question. Is the TPP really dead? Linda Walton asks. And yes, Linda, it looks like it is. Obama announced last week that he will not bring it up in the lame duck session. Are these things ever dead? Well, until we are in power, I think we can't take anything for granted. But it does look like it has been stopped. So congratulations to everyone that was a part of this. What else do we have here? Paul Ryan has also said Congress will not vote on it, so it is certainly dead for now. Ranked choice voting. Jared O'Connell says ranked choice voting and open debates are opposed by the parties in power because it would threaten the political system. How do we organize to demand these reforms? Great question, Jared, and that's exactly why we need an independent political party so that we can actually push these issues. And I urge you to come to the gathering on inauguration. Come to Occupy Inauguration. We'll also be holding a conference in DC in February to help bring us together. You know, libertarians, Greens, maybe the Burners. Well, I should say many of the Burners are already with us, burning green together. Go Burners. But many of the Bernie folks, including Bernie Sanders himself, let's see if he'll stand up for these reforms. Interestingly, Howard Dean, who's being looked at as a possible head of the DNC, he had an op-ed in the New York Times about 3 or 4 weeks ago where he came out for ranked choice voting. So we may be at a real, tipping point on these electoral reforms. Nedra Garcia is recalling, yes, peaceful sit-ins and protests against Vietnam. Let's see. Opinions on the Electoral College from Claire Miller. Great question, Claire. Yes, it's time to end that distortion of the popular vote, and we need to, reenact a direct popular vote and move forward with that. So that is actually on the table as one of our 3 initial campaigns, because this is a time of great this is a teachable moment right now where people are really agonizing about the impacts of the Electoral College. Let's see, what else do we have? Foreign policies. Someone wants to know, what is my stance on the status quo foreign policies? So absolutely, our foreign policies are catastrophic. We tried to really launch a different path forward during the election. Had we been able to participate in the debates, there's no way that Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton could have come off with their defending their policies, their blatant militarism, their wasteful Department of Offense. It's not a Department of Defense, it's a Department of Offense. It currently costs us more than half of our discretionary budget and almost half of your income taxes. And what has it created? Failed states, mass refugee migrations, and worse terrorist threats. So we need a different kind of foreign policy based on international law and human rights, in which we stop providing weapons and arms, in which we stop providing assistance to countries who are massively violating international law and human rights. And that includes Saudi Arabia. That also includes the State of Israel, which is on which we are spending $8 million a day right now to assist the Israeli army in its violations of human rights and international law. And let's see, let's check another question. Someone is saying, yes, cats. That's from JJ Angel. And what else? Trust the mainstream media, question mark? Certainly not. We need to break up the mainstream media. We need to exercise antitrust laws. And we also need to reclaim the public airwaves for use for public purpose. Right now, we give away our airwaves. We don't even rent them out. We give them away to private corporations to shut down our elections, to shut down real debate and discussion. Somebody says, I love you and your cat. Thank you, Randy. Thank you, Randy V. I love my cat, too. How about the selection of Steve Bannon for chief strategist? Gregory DB asks. Yes, this is really disastrous. Steve Bannon, a blatant white supremacist, anti-Semitic, racist, etc. We need to exert a lot of pressure to get him out. Just remember, when people come out in large numbers, governments change. And you can remember, if you were around a ways back, when the East German government fell. Why did it fall? Because people were out in large numbers marching. They were out in such huge numbers that it was a great embarrassment to the government. The East German government, which was extremely repressive and militarist and, a big security surveillance state, kind of like what we got right now, which Donald Trump, has the liberty to use because Barack Obama kind of created the system for him. Anyhow, the government of East Germany fell because people got out and marched. And when the government was so humiliated that they called out the troops refused to fire because there were the moms and the baby carriages and the grandmas and everybody else. So that's how governments change. Nobody expected it. Chris Hedges reports, and he was there, I believe, at the time, as a foreign correspondent for the New York Times. He reports that just days before, the democracy activists had been meeting saying that, well, maybe in 10 years they would see a change. And actually, the wall came down that very week. Okay, what else? Somebody is saying, hire me for your PR image. I think if you rocked a punk spiked mohawk and a biker jacket, you'd do really well with millennial voters. Okay, that's kind of a cool idea. All right, and then Sadia Ali says, OMG cat, and let's see, someone else is raising questions about election fraud, voter suppression. How do we get the truth out? And, I'll just say that, voter suppression, a huge problem. And we are looking at the numbers around potential election fraud, et cetera. So stay tuned. In the meantime, fighting for a constitutional right to vote for every American, to fight this new sort of poll tax system requiring people to have special kinds of IDs that poor people in particular, elders, handicapped can have a lot of trouble getting. We need to bring that to an end. So in terms of bringing things to an end, it's been really wonderful talking with you tonight. I don't want to stretch us too long on a weekday night. We'll be back soon, and we'll be making these talks regular. I hope to be back soon with some of the many activist voices, as well as some of our celebrity voices, the Cornel Wests and Mark Lamont Hills and Melina Abdullahs, just the wonderful people who are standing up, doing the incredible work in all of our communities that gives us, I think, the team that we need, that we're all a part of, to take back our future, to say, no, we do not consent to the crisis of our climate, the crisis of our economy, the crisis of mass incarceration, of police violence, the crisis of a generation locked in debt. There is an America and a world that works for all of us, that puts people, planet, and peace over profit. We'll talk more about how we solve those issues. For right now, I think the main thing is for us to be coming together and to organize together. I urge you to share this discussion with your friends, to keep bringing your friends in so that we can keep building. Start thinking right now about coming out for Occupy the inauguration on January 20th and 21st in Washington, D.C. Also, throw something into the hat if you can, because as we wind down from our election campaign, we will be winding up for the kinds of election reforms that we need. That is for ranked choice voting, for opening up the debates, for having a people-sponsored debate commission, not a debate commission sponsored by the Democratic and Republican parties, for a popular national vote. These will be some of the things that we begin to fight on. Think about coming to our conference for democratizing our elections. This will happen in February. Stay tuned for the date. And throw $5 into the hat if you can at Jill2016.com, so that we can keep building on this very important breakthrough at this tipping point moment right now, where people have said enough is enough. We need a new way forward. Enough of the propaganda from the Democratic Party. They have failed enough. The clock is ticking. This is the time for us to stand up with a different way forward. We are the ones we've been waiting for. Thank you all so very much. All the best, and I hope to see you later this week. Tomorrow, in fact, we will be airing part 3 of an incredible documentary series called The Revolution Televised. The prior episodes are on our Facebook page. You can also find them at Right Brain. That's W-R-I-T-E, Brain. If you Google Right Brain, The Revolution Televised, you can see them. We'll be airing it on our Facebook page tomorrow night. This is an amazing film produced at the DNC, and it tells the story of the meltdown of the Democratic Party and what happened in Bernie Sanders' fight, in his sabotage, and how we continue this fight together. So that'll be tomorrow night on this channel, and that's narrated by Viggo Mortensen. So check it out. I hope to see you there, and soon after on this channel right here on our website and on our Facebook and social media. Thanks all so much. Keep up the fight. Stay strong. See you soon. Bye-bye.